The one and only multiverse presents a grand unified theory. Universal Dark Matter Particle, UDMP. The spinning, uniform construction of primal matter. Sand. The smallest spinning sphere, uniform, indivisible particle. Cannot travel independently. Smallest part of a dark matter C, or, the smallest part of a structure. UDMPs. Magnetic spin and flow energy, with a polarized spatial force. Primal matter, sand grains. Web page and video are not AI generated. Your host, Richard E. Noer. The creation, Universal Dark Matter Particle, UDMP. A fundamental structure of primal matter locked in a spherical shape by spinning magnetic energy. If the particle has no rotation, there will be no magnetic polarized force. It is their spin energy that creates a torus particle structure, north-south poles, and a tiny spinning body. There is a compact ocean of these compressed particles in a supercolossal black star. B. When primal space collides with the magnetic containment field of a rotating black star, all spin of perimeter particles of the star slow down, then stop. The attraction force of the superstar has been eliminated and a decompression force takes over. The star's gravity currents has been replaced with XCP dark energy, and expanding dark matter particles, thus creating more and more mass. C. Because the superstar is still rotating, it transfers this energy to primal particle space, thus creating more, new, tiny, super-compressed spinning spheres. They supplement the particles that have been freed from the former black star. This is the only way that universal particles are created. They are cloned by compressed rotating sibling particles and have the same compact spin energy of the black star. D. As the new and old universal particles spin, and slowly decompress, they all have a polar force, in and between each particle. This is because the tiny particle bodies have an axis, with a one-way spatial magnetic flow through the center of each tiny sphere. The flow is produced by a north-south pole magnetic force. The north and south poles in turn, is what creates a force field, and isolates each particle from its neighbor. This is because the neighbor has its own closed spin and magnetic flow, and has a slightly different plane and orientation. So the particles never do actually touch. They are separated from physically joining by pole magnetism. Universal particle stats. How big are universal particles? Their size is a highly difficult question to answer because it depends on the energy level of each particle. Bear in mind they all have the same amount of matter, but when energy is added or subtracted, they change their mass drastically. Dark energy. If we use the area of a proton as a standard, it certainly takes millions if not billions of universal particles to form the proton. In a black star, it is possibly trillions per the same volume. Now, if an area the size of a proton is located in intergalactic space, it would have fewer particles and more universal particle volume. This is because of lower energy levels. To add more confusion, it's magnetic space that changes size, not the amount of matter, so a volume measurement is difficult to define. B. This brings us to a point where mathematics is needed to add clarity. If we use logic, reason, and relativity for the average size of particles and polarized space, it should wind up being somewhere around 10 to the 25 or 30. As you can see, a mathematical explanation would have much more credibility. Unfortunately, I am not a mathematician, but if I were, I bet it would take me a lifetime to figure this one out. I am certain that when skilled mathematicians tackle this area of complexity, the problem of size will be solved. Universal Dark Matter Particle C. UDMPC. It is important to establish the basic understanding that there is no such thing as empty space. In the extreme realm of the minuscule, so-called dark matter space is composed of tiny grains of primal matter in a spinning formation. These are the dark matter universal particles. B. These spherical formations are very small, round, and are suspended in a force field generated by all particles with their active spin energy. It is the magnetic pressure of the adjacent particles, and their pole plane orientation, that creates a polarized force which keeps them from sticking together, unless specific conditions exist. In other words, not only do universal particles have an internal flowing spatial force, they also have an external force that creates distance from each other. The dark energy force of magnetism. C. UDMPs all have basically the same amount of primal matter. D. Because of the absence of empty space, universal dark matter particles can only rotate, expand, shrink, and move in unison. They cannot individually travel through the medium because they are the ones that creates the space that they're in. On the other hand, they can travel as a stream, current. This is the phenomena of gravity, anti-gravity, and heat. So in TM theory, all of the polarized cosmic expanse is primal matter plus spinning universal particles plus a magnetic spatial force. Not a vast expanse of nothing with floating particles and bodies that create a mysterious gravitational attraction. There is overwhelming evidence that gravity, light, heat, and magnetic waves can't, and would not be able to travel through a vast expanse of nothing. Nothing does not have height, width, or depth. Uniform particles of primal matter creates a magnetic force. Spinning gyroscopes or tops also create a magnetic spatial force in material space. The function, all universal particles spin, that is how they use most of their energy. Except in the core of a black star. B. As universal particles spin, they create heat. This is because of the tiny pulling irregularities of spin energy on other particles. C. When universal particles spin faster, they contract, thus decreasing its internal, external space. This is the pulling power of magnetism. Smaller particles pull on larger ones, but when they spin slower, they don't pull as much. So, there is the strong pulling force of fast spin, and the weak pulling force of slow spin. D. When these particles rotate, they create a magnetic flow through each particle axis, which in turn creates a north and south pole for each tiny particle. This brings zone magnetic properties into existence. As you already know, magnetic flowing fields can attract and repel. This is an important fundamental force. Magnetism creation applies to all spinning bodies, metallic or non-metallic. If particles align in strings and their magnetic properties synchronize, they can create magnetic chains of particles. This in turn gives structure to the interdependent particles. These chain fields produce counter-rotating fields. Because of a general direction of all particles in the expanding space, multitudes of corkscrew patterns evolve in the dark matter C. This produces magnetic strings of universal particles. Adjacent particles also align and complement the strings, thus forming new, thicker, and longer multiple strands. Eventually an energetic looping yarn size rope can form. If these looping yarn type fields wrap around themselves, the loops can close off from the rest of the matrix and become magnetically closed. This is exactly how each proton forms. The protons now have CW looping magnetic fields passing through a center axis, and CCW looping yarn fields that don't. These CCW yarn fields are squeezed out, thus preventing them from closing their loops. TM calls this phenomenon of energy and matter a Horn torus, composite SML structure. Because the CW yarn fields have more particles and exposure, the structure has a positive charge, and is now called a free proton. The proton has internal, external spin, and has its own polar magnetic gravitational force. Oceans of free protons has formed in the dark matter C. At this now point in evolution, there is one thing that no one has considered. The proton, as space evolves, now has its universal particle magnetic force, along with new gravity and quantum material space. What? That's right, you will not find this prediction anywhere in other theories. TM predicts, if you can magnetically close space with matter and energy, you can create or dissipate an expanding, contracting, pulling, pushing, spatial environment. The amount of force and spin energy of the proton was locked and set at a specific time in a black star's supernova evolution. As the universe inflates more, the proton will develop increasing potential energy relative to the spatial density of the area. This is what TM refers to as the first stage of gravity. The proton can now move through the magnetic particle C with its own specific potential energy, gravity, torus, and possibly ring fields. If the proton is moving extremely fast, there will be no quantum fields. The demise of universal particles, losing active, potential energy. When universal particles cool, they relax and their rotation slows. The slower they rotate, the weaker their polar force and the larger the particle's mass. Each tiny inflating particle pushes on adjoining particles, and this is what creates XP dark energy. B. When particles reach near absolute zero, in parts of the cold expanse, rotation slows down so much dark matter particles lose torus lock. Because there is no more communal spin energy, there is no polarized pull or pushing influence on neighboring particles. This causes the structures to decompose and their magnetic force weakens. This in turn, frees up the formations of primal matter and produces the final DMI of the universe. C. After universal particles disintegrate, there is only primal matter left. Each minuscule piece of primal matter is irregular with no internal energy, but there still is a spatial force, it's just not polarized. This is because of the moving, vibrating, and bumping of individual particle grains with each other, without any spinning polar axis or force. Conclusion: in primal space there are no universal particles to pass light, gravity, heat, or polarized energy from particle to particle, but it is still not empty space, there is matter plus a non-polarized spatial force. The energy and behavior of dark matter particles, in a medium of polarized space, or structures. Encyclopedia 5 has this table of information. The conclusion: A. All of existence is matter plus active and potential energy, with a magnetic spatial force. B. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. C. There are two formulations of basic matter, spherical and primal. D. Only the spherical structures of matter can spin, attract, and repel. E. In the interior of the tiny spherical bodies, there is a set amount of primal matter, but because of spin energy, a polarized magnetic force flows through its axis. This in turn, is what creates a north and south pole for each particle, and a changing magnetic space. Dark energy. F. Only spinning matter itself can create a polarized spatial force, and multitudes of spinning bodies create more of it. G. When matter moves, it produces all the active energy of the cosmos. If you grab onto the concept of spin energy, substance, changing mass and magnetic space, all of a sudden the universe, multiverse, cosmos, becomes a breathing entity. It can expand, contract, move and evolve. When it does all these things it creates time. These simple events has baffled mankind forever because of the belief in the vast expanse of nothing. This false assumption has led to the misunderstanding of how light, magnetic waves, heat, gravity, and the expansion of space can function. The truth is, these energies cannot, and do not work in empty space, there must be a medium. The Grand Unified Theory predicts that between all planets, stars and galaxies, there is matter plus a dark energy spatial force, polarized or non-polarized. As you can clearly see, space is not the expanse of nothing, it is the expanse of everything. If you need more evidence to justify how energy travels through space, just think about how an aurora borealis becomes so spectacular. The wonder of the cosmos has finally been revealed, and it is truly miraculous, it may even be called divine. Your host, Richard E. Noer. Young me. Mini me. Email, noerastronomy@gmail.com. Here in a multiverse, our goal is to find the cosmic truth. No matter where, or how far it takes you, the universe truly does unify. If you get the basics right.